June 17th, the WNBA dropped its first All-Star voting returns, and Caitlin Clark, the biggest draw this sport has ever produced, landed 5th, not 1st, 5th. The woman whose office decides how those votes get counted is named Cathy Engelbert. A year ago, Clark didn't just lead this vote, she buried it. Now the commissioner's own system has her behind 4 other players, with 9 days left to vote. Here's the part nobody scrolling past the headline has stopped to ask. How does the most watched, most jerseys sold, most talked about player in women's basketball end up 5th in a fan vote, when the fans are the ones who made her famous? Because this isn't a story about Caitlin Clark losing her grip. It's a story about who gets to hold the pen. Start with what Clark actually is to this league. She's the reason the arenas are full. She's the reason the TV windows jump to the big networks. She's the engine. Everybody knows that. So when her name shows up 5th on a ballot, the natural reaction from her fans was simple. Something's wrong with the count, and here's the number that makes them say it. In last year's first returns, Caitlin Clark pulled 515,993 votes. She led everyone by a wide, comfortable margin. This year, that same first checkpoint has her at 253,602. Her total didn't dip. It got cut almost in half, in 12 months. That's not a slump. That's a cliff. Now look at who's ahead of her. Aliyah Wilson, first with 308,249. Paige Bueckers, second. And in third, this is the one that stung in Indiana. Aliyah Boston, Clark's own teammate, sitting 2 spots above her. Then Breanna Stewart in 4th, and Clark 5th. Clark isn't even leading her own locker room on the ballot. Sit with that for a second. So the question gets sharper. What changed between last June and this one? The fans didn't disappear. The building's still loud, the merch still sells out. The thing that changed is the math underneath the vote. And Cathy Engelbert is the one who signed off on that math. Here's how the count actually works now, and almost nobody on your feed has explained it. When you vote as a fan, you're not voting the way you think you are. The fan vote, all of it, every ballot from every Caitlin Clark supporter in the country, counts for exactly half, 50%. The other half is split between 2 rooms you'll never get into. The players get 25%. A media panel gets the other 25%. So picture it. Clark can win the public in a landslide. And she basically does. But the public only controls half the room. Average the 3 groups together, rank by rank, and a player the country adores can slide right down the board. Not because the fans left, because the fans got quietly cut down to half the say they used to have. Let me play it out, because the mechanics are the whole story. Say Clark runs away with the fan vote. First place, clean, good. But then the players rank her, say 4th or 5th among guards, and the media panel slots her somewhere in the middle too. The system doesn't take her best score. It averages all 3. So one dominant number gets dragged down by 2 soft ones, and the final order spits her out at 5th. The fans did their job. The other 2 rooms erased the lead. And that brings us to the room that should make Fever fans the most uneasy, the players. 25% of this vote is filled out by the other women in the league. The same players Clark just dropped 30 on, the same benches she's quieting on the road. You don't have to imagine a conspiracy to see how that ballot leans. These are competitors voting on a rival who's pulling every spotlight in the sport toward herself. Human nature does the rest, and Engelbert's format hands that human nature a full quarter of the result. Then there's the media panel, the other 25. A group of people whose whole job this season has been writing about whether Caitlin Clark is overhyped, whether she's the hardest player in the league to coach, whether the attention is fair. That's the room handing out the other quarter of her score. So before a single fan logs on, half the vote is already sitting with the players she's beating and the press that's been picking her apart. The crowd gets what's left. Now, I have to be straight with you, because there's a louder version of this story going around. A lot of channels this week are screaming that the vote is rigged, that it's fake, that somebody needs to investigate. I'm not going to sell you that because there's no reporter, no team, no league source behind it. It's a feeling, not a fact. The truth is duller and honestly more damning. Nobody had to rig anything. The format does the work in broad daylight. And here's the part that should bother every Fever fan watching. We've seen this exact blueprint before, just in a different league. Back in 2017, the NBA had the same problem in reverse. fans had stuffed the ballot so hard that a role player named Zaza Pachulia pulled 768,112 votes and nearly started the All-Star game over actual superstars. The league panicked, and the fix they reached for was this: drop the fans to 50% and hand the other half to the players and the media. Same split, 25 and 25. The entire point of that design was to make sure the crowd could never again override the people inside the game. It worked. It quietly took the wheel out of the fans' hands. So, when that same formula lands on Caitlin Clark, the most fan-powered athlete this league has ever had, you can see exactly what it does. It softens a popular vote, and there's no player in America right now whose popularity outruns her insider support quite like Clark's. The math doesn't just fail to help her, it's practically built to find her. Therefore, the fifth-place number isn't a verdict on Caitlin Clark. It's a mirror held up to the system she plays in. The fans did their part, 250,000 of them, more than enough to lead under the old rules. It's the two rooms behind the curtain that pulled her down. Now, somebody in the comments is already typing it, so let me beat you to it. Yes, the vote totals are down across the whole league this year, not just for Clark. Turnout dipped everywhere. That's real, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But here's what a down year in turnout does not explain. It doesn't explain falling from first to fifth. A smaller pie still gets sliced the same way. If Clark were still the runaway favorite, she'd still be on top of a smaller pile. Turnout changes the size of the numbers. It doesn't change the order. The order changed because 3 rooms get averaged together, and 2 of those rooms aren't hers. That's the difference between fewer people voted and the people who love her got cut to half. One's a slow news cycle. The other's a design choice. And here's why the clock matters. This isn't the final tally. It's the first checkpoint. Voting runs all the way to Saturday, June 27th, just before midnight Eastern. After that, the starters lock for the All-Star game on July 25th in Chicago. So there's still time. But still time cuts both ways, because the fans can pour everything they've got into the 50% they control, and the other 50 stays exactly where it is. They can win their half by a mile and still watch her come up short. That's the trap. You can do everything right, and the math still doesn't move. So if you're a fan and you actually want to move the needle, here's the honest version of what you're up against. You can vote, and you should, every day, through the app, through the league's site, through the hashtag posts that count as ballots. Stack them up. Flood your 50%. But understand what that 50% can and can't reach. It can lift her score. It cannot touch the player's quarter, and it cannot touch the media's quarter. So the fans aren't being asked to win a vote. They're being asked to win half a vote by enough of a margin that it drags the other half along. That's a steeper hill than anyone put on the graphic. And the people who drew the hill that way are the ones who set the format. So, what does this actually cost her? On paper, 5th place still makes the team. She's not getting left out. But starting and not starting is the gap between being introduced as the face of the league in Chicago, or sitting and waiting while 4 other names get called first. For the most popular player in the sport, in a game built off her own gravity, that's not small. That's a statement about who the league decides to put at the front of the room. And that statement was shaped the day Cathy Engelbert's office stood behind a format that turns a landslide into a 5th-place finish. Here's what I keep coming back to. The fans were told their voice counts. They showed up, 250,000 strong for one player, and the rules quietly made sure that voice was only ever worth half. So the real question isn't whether Caitlin Clark makes the All-Star team. She will. The question is whether the people who built this sport around her ever actually had the say they thought they did. Voting's open until the 27th. Tell me in the comments, if the fans control half the vote and Clark still can't crack the top 4, who's really holding the pen? I've got my answer. I want to hear yours.